I should have made a cup of tea.
Hello, we're live.
Good evening.
Hey.
Are we?
No, one second, I'm gonna put the bag in. I'll
What's that?
We're live.
What's that? Is that you didn't put your huge modular system in the shop, Richard? What's that?
We're live.
Oh, me.
Is that, yeah.
It's over this.
Is it over there?
It's over there. Yeah, this is like my mixing mastering setup behind me here.
Oh yeah.
But the modular is like over there.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah. Maybe you should turn that camera around.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Let them have it.
You've got to show us the Colossus look, because I don't think anybody's got one. I don't know anybody who has one.
I've got number 3.
Oh, do you know how many are made of the Colossus so far?
Not many, because he makes them himself with one other guy. And I read that he was going to do 200. But when he came down with it, I said, so how, are you going to cut it at 200? And he just went, 200? I'm not going to even make it to 10. It's because he's like, it's just so much work. So I don't know. I don't know. There must be like 6 or something, I guess.
Wow.
Wow. Does he still? Can you put a request to have one built if you want one, or is he just said, oh, he'll still will build them?
He will, yeah, and he's Tom. He's a good guy. If you just look up Colossus on Devine Solutions, I mean, man, if you like just wrote something to him, he'd be all over you.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember buying a lot of the earlier Analog Solutions modules back.
Yeah.
2005 or whatever it was when I had my first 2 Dofer cases. There wasn't really much out back then. You could buy Dofer, Schwayman, or Analog Solutions.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that he had even made other stuff like that. So I'm surprised to see that system.
I'm not familiar with this Colossus. What is it?
It's the thing is, if I move the computer over there,
yeah.
For some reason the headphone jack's not working. So
Oh, good. Don't fuck with it then.
Well, I guess people can Google it. People can
you can look at it. Look at it. It's actually better to look at it online. Yeah. It shows close-ups of all the design of it.
Oh wow!
But it's fantastic. I kind of avoided the modular era of late because I'm kind of more into things that are already built to some extent. That's just me. So when Tom did that, I thought that's what I want. That's what I want. And,
so it's kind of got that pin matrix thing that you'd find on a.
Yeah, it's got 2 of them.
Wow.
It's got a CV matrix and a signal matrix.
That's
so you can really have fun for all the family.
And is that like a built-in oscilloscope there?
It is, yeah, and the it's an analog one as well. But it's
has it made into any of your music yet, or are you still exploring it?
I think I've recorded it a lot, but I haven't actually used it in the way that I might use it for a track before. I've just really it's kind of a workstation in itself. I can just sit behind that and make stuff, and for no other reason than just create it on that. So I don't know where I'm going to go with it, to be honest. It's just really good fun. It's really interesting, and
And were you able to even find out what it sounds like before you got it? Did you
No.
visit the guy, or no? You just bought it. You just bought it blind. Wow.
I know their stuff. I know kind of how their oscillators sound and bits and bobs. But the option was to drive over to Birmingham, where he's based, and I just couldn't be bothered. So, you know, I knew it was going to be good because, you know, I've spoken to Tom before, and he's eccentric, but quite totally dedicated to what he does. So I wasn't worried about that. It's not like a huge firm or anything, you know. This guy's lived with making synths for God knows how many years now.
Yeah.
He's old school.
Yeah. My first modular case was an Analog Solutions case as well.
From way back.
Yeah.
Yeah. He gave me these strange. I don't know what to make of these, but I'll go and get one.
Okay, so in the meantime, I should tell everybody that if you're watching this on YouTube, you can put your comments into the comment section and we can pick them up here. And if there's any specific questions you have for Richard, Luke, or Mo, or myself, then don't feel... Oh, what's that?
He gave me one of these, and I'm not that technical minded to know.
Looks like 4 houses.
Yeah. I think it's some kind of circuit board.
Oh, okay.
I'm really doing him a favour here.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you sold the stuff on there,
Okay.
and it's cool.
That's cool. Mm.
Yeah, I don't.
So it's like just like a little kit.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah.
It's really cool. Huh. Yeah, it's I haven't had experience with that particular system, but I played on the System 100 many times. That's a really fun synthesizer to play on. I think the one I played on had 9 oscillators. It was the last one I played was at the university again, in Belgium, and I had a friend bring me there. He said, "Hey, they got a Synthy 100 if you want to play with it for a few hours." And you know, I'll never forget. There's a key.
Yeah, I heard about
the key out of the teacher's closet or something, because they rarely powered it on. But to turn it on, you had to stick an ignition key to power it up. Does yours turn on with a key or no?
Unfortunately, not.
Oh, I love that. I love turning a synthesizer on with a key. I think that's such a badass.
Yeah. Does it have like a car where you kind of?
Yeah, it had a physical.
You turn it.
You turned it on to turn on the power supply. Yeah, I thought that was great.
You know what other synth had that what is it called, that instrument that Trent Reznor used on scoring that one film? Ah, Jesus, why is it slipping in my head? Alessandro has one.
Swarmatron?
The Swarmatron. That one also had a key to start it as well, didn't it?
Yeah, it's like the 2 brothers, or I think they're brothers, that made those instruments. Yeah, that.
Oh yeah. I saw that. Yeah, they built all these. Yeah, they're like the most exotic instruments you've ever seen.
Yeah,
it's crazy. Yeah.
What is it? What is it? Is it like a synth or?
Yeah, it's like a weird synthesizer with a ton of oscillators, and it has this long ribbon. Instead of a keyboard, it has like a ribbon cable that you can push down and bend up and down to get these kind of weird. It's really difficult to explain. I'd have to send you a picture of it to look at it.
Yeah, I guess the closest thing the closest thing that reminds me of that, in which is actually manufactured, is the folk tech stuff.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's got this. Yeah.
He's a good friend of mine. Yeah, they make some pretty boutique instruments, but yeah, I remember. I don't know what happened to the Swarmatron guys. I remember they were selling stuff through Big City for a while, and then they've gone kind of quiet. I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen many updates from them, but
well, it was a hefty price range on that thing. I think it started at like $10,000 for one of them. Right?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, it was like 6,000-7,000 from what I remember, but yeah, it wasn't cheap. And I think I knew one of my friends bought one. One of them, my friends in New York, got one, and then I didn't really hear much from them after that point. After they initially came up with that. And I think there's a reactor instrument. There's a couple people that built digital emulations of that.
Oh, really?
Their synth too, yeah. So there's, I think on the reactor users forum, some guy rebuilt a digital version of the Swarmatron that a lot of my friends were playing around with. But yeah, it's an interesting concept for sure.
I'm kind of resisting the Googling this at the same time. You know? Well, it's still going down that road because just constantly looking up stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's funny how some of these guys that make stuff, they a lot of them, a lot of them do disappear. And always kind of, well, you just stopped.
Or you filed for bankruptcy.
Yeah, but you think at £10,000 a synth, they must have made a little bit to keep going. But what do I know? I don't make them. Just use them. Yeah.
Guys, we should also say hi to Colin Benders and the Stream Punks. They're all over the comments right now.
Oh, it's Colin.
Hey, Colin.
Yeah, Colin's here. Yeah.
Oh, Colin's awesome.
Here's Colin. Here we go.
Hey.
Oh, Mr. Benders.
So Colin, it's not a Synthi 100, but it's very close. We were just discussing it. Yeah. I saw another question because you said, Richard, you visited the Ghent University to play with this Synthi 100. There are more places like that in around the world, I guess. Like there's Willem II Studios in Holland. They have they have all these they have an ARP 2500 and lots of testing equipment, the kind of stuff that my mate Monopoly from Rotterdam is also using, these old Brul and Kjaer things. And there was somebody commenting about a place in, I lost the comment, it's going too fast. I think, let me see. Here we go, Calgary. Have anybody heard about this place? Studio Bell.
Where's Calgary? Is that
Canada? Yeah. Is it the Studio Bell, the place? Is it like a museum where they have like several hundred synthesizers that you can go visit, or?
I don't know. It just reminded. No, me neither. But it's interesting that now this stuff is all getting so collectible and old and difficult to maintain. They seem to be ending up more and more in these places where they collect everything and maintain it. And some of them open up the doors for producers or people who want to spend some time with these things. Like, for example, like MESS in Melbourne, MESS in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Heard about that one?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I haven't been there.
No, me neither. I'd love to go there. And there's one in Switzerland as well, I think. So yeah, it's interesting to see how all these massive ancient machines are all ending up in these types of places.
Yeah. I think it's great that there's some way, there's places like this that will keep these machines and restore
accessible.
them.
Yeah, and accessible.
So that you could play with them or record them. And
yeah, I mean, I think the good thing about that as well, it kind of dispels the myth a bit. If people can have access to them, it sort of dispels that myth about them a bit, which is good because it's okay. I had to go on a Synthi 100, and just brings it down a notch. It's a machine, So
yeah.
Have fun
just
on
another
it.
Just another thing to get your head around, basically. Yeah.
Right. So I think that's a great thing. I guess that's going to happen more and more, isn't it? If we got the skills to preserve stuff, just going to end up with these even more museums of huge designs and inventions. It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. Hopefully they last long enough.
Hope we do, or
that too as well.
Oh yeah.
It's like we're moving past vintage into the next Now they're just ancient.
Yeah.
I have a collection of ancient synths.
Yeah. Well, like that ancient one called the 909. Yeah. You know, it's like, is that really ancient now? I suppose it is, isn't it? But,
It's getting
Well,
there.
that's like that's almost 30 years old by now, isn't it?
Yeah.
All the old
Yeah.
Roland stuff. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Wild to think that, that a lot of that stuff I was buying in high school didn't seem that old back then, but now, as an old dad, that stuff's real old.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're from the lucky generation that was able to pick all that stuff up for next to nothing. You know, before the internet, just the local newspaper, and you know, just run out and find some old guy who had it gathering dust in the attic or something. You know,
There's a lot of
I mean.
that.
Yeah, I know many stories like that, and they all seem to get more exaggerated all the time. Yeah, I got my 303 for
£20.
I exchanged it for an old bicycle or something, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, lots of the stuff that I've got here now, I definitely would not pay the prices for those machines that are current right now. You know, it's just absolutely crazy how much. You know, the ARP 2600, for example, is now like well over 10K. You know, and same for the EMS Synthy, you know, stuff like that from that era. You know, in the early 90s, you could pick that up for, you know, really decent prices. You know,
Yeah,
people just didn't want to use it anymore. Yeah.
No one wanted that gear. That's how I got all. That's a lot of people ask how I got all my stuff. That's just like you. I bought a lot of the analog stuff back in the mid 90s, early 90s when I started building my studio, and that was the only gear that I could afford. Was going into the pawn shops and buying 808s and 909s. At that time, no one wanted any, like my Jupiter 6 and all the stuff all that stuff was super, you know, $300-400. You know, my 808 I paid $200 something for. My ARP 2600 I paid $250 for from a pawn shop. There
you go.
You know,
$250.
I was paying Behringer prices for vintage gear back then.
Yeah.
You know,
there was a huge period where people just didn't want it. They just
no one wanted that stuff. No.
Nobody liked the sound of them, or the mechanicalness of them. It was old. It was you know, and you could just literally pick up. We used to have a paper called Loot in the UK, and had a huge musical section. And every Friday, you just look down at 909, 909, 808, 303. SH101, you know, and you say, oh, that's not a bad price. You know, I'll just get in the car, go and see the guy, do a deal. And that was on limited budgets as well. So again, it was that thing. It was cheap. It was cheap compared to anything new. And that's the way it was. That's the way it was, folks, back in the day.
Yeah.
It'll never be that way again.
On the other hand, I mean, if you're starting out right now, or you want to get your hands on some gear that is very capable, you know, it's a lot cheaper than it has been for a long time, you know. So it's way more accessible these days, I guess, you know, because it's you know, you can get so many crazy bits of gear. There's something new coming out every week.
Yeah.
And it's also very affordable, you know. Hey, hello.
Oh. How you doing, Mr. Guys?
Hi.
Yeah, we're just talking about.
We're having a bit of a chat.
Can you hear him? Yep, I can hear. Yeah. Anyway, are you going to say bye?
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
See, that was civil. See, if that was Richard, I bet you'd probably hammering nails into the door right now.
I said a bit.
My daughter would be banging, open the door! Open the door like you never locked the door!
Here you go. I think the forum found out who she is.
Yeah, she's popular on Instagram. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Anyway, yeah. So, yeah. Well,
So,
sorry. What was it?
No, go on. I mean, I just thought maybe it's interesting to see what's the latest piece of gear everybody got excited about at the moment.
Oh man.
Okay. Usually that's not too difficult of a question, isn't it? Okay, let me tell you what I found.
Yeah.
I found this. It's a Circumvent website. I don't know the name off the top of my head, but you guys might know it. It's they make this box, which basically plugs into the sound card slot on the back of an Roland R8 with some type of SCSI connection. And it circuit bends the hell out of the drum machine, and sounds very much unlike anything you've ever heard coming from that machine.
Wow.
So that's what, and yeah, I mean, some of these
Do you remember
circuit
the-
bends. Yeah, I can look it up for you, but
So I have a ton of my drum machine circuit bent.
yeah,
Well,
I'm
just the TR8. Just that.
No, the old Roland R8, you know, the human feel drum machine, the black one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called. The website is circuitbenders.co.uk.
Yeah, circuit benders. Those guys are freaks, man.
Yeah, I mean,
they love it.
The
Freaks,
you know,
in a good way.
usually circuit bended machines, you know, they sound pretty harsh if you once you get into the process of it, you know.
Yeah.
But this one, to my ears, sounded very versatile, and also had some really freaky sort of it's noisy but not as harsh as I'm used to hearing from circuit bend equipment. But it's like €80 or something. It's quite affordable, and it completely expands the range of the. Ah, wow, okay. Oh, that's the R8
30. Yeah,
Yamaha.
actually, this drum machine's. Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the R8 because I was going to do my R8 next.
Okay.
So any of the old digital drum machines that have like the cards will work, but this one I had done by Alien Devices, my friend John.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But he did some other stuff for me too. Then there's. Do you guys know the Highly Liquid guys?
No.
No.
I really wanted to get the 707 Alien Devices mod.
Yeah, I have that one as well. My favorite is the glitch desk. This let me see if I can even hold it up. So,
Oh yeah.
Highly Liquid built this. I think he made like 5 of these, maybe 6 of these. They're really, really rare. What's cool about it is it uses let me see here. It's uses DB25 connector cables. So I have a CZ101 that he modded all the points, pre-modded all the patch points for, and then he did a TR707 for me that he did all the pre-patching for. So you have this like DB25 cable on the side of the 707 or the CZ101, and what you do is all of the circuit bends or patch points with banana jack cables, so you can cross and you like cross patch different circuit bends in real time. And what's neat about this desk is it's got a sequencer built in, so you can sequence each
nice.
bend
Yeah.
in time, and it's got MIDI. You can send MIDI clock to it. So what's really neat is you can do live circuit bending while you're sequencing through each one of these different patch bends. So you come up with all these crazy. I mean, I've gotten stuff that's just like where I start laughing. I'm just like, it gets so crazy and out of control so quickly that it just becomes hours and hours of fun. It's like a wormhole of just, insanity. But it's really, really fun. Yeah, I've got, I don't know, 40, 50 different circuit bent instruments, and I've used them for years. But yeah, that's cool that you bring that up. I haven't heard many people recently going back and using any circuit bent stuff in a while. I've always been a circuit junkie.
Yeah, the thing though that caught my ear on this one, on the R8 one that I mentioned, is that like I told you when you were over just grabbing your gear, sometimes it can get really, really harsh very, very quickly, and this the type of sounds that come from the box that I found, they seem to be a bit more they're obviously circuit band sounds. Yeah, they're obviously circuit band sounds, but they sounded a bit more pleasant to my ears as well. So I don't know I haven't heard the examples that you mentioned, Richard, but this seems like an endless, like you said, like an endless thing, to expand the range of your instrument by so much.
Yeah, with the R8 would be a really good drum machine. Like the RY30 is incredible when you circuit bend it. It just by the nature of how the drum machine works, you can automate pitch information, like all kinds of stuff really quickly into the pattern. And when you're circuit bending the while it's sequencing and all that data is all being sequenced, you get really, really strange stuff that comes out. I've used it, I don't know how many dozens of times, and I've had this RY30, since like mid 90s when I got it for, I think I paid like $50 or something for it. I've just held on to it because I love the sound of it. And then I found a couple people that, in like the early 2000s, mid 2000s, that were doing circuit bends on a lot of these machines. And then I was just like, hey, I'd be totally up for circuit bending that. And then I went nuts. Like I started doing, vintage analog stuff as well. Like I think I had John also do this one for my 606. You guys can see that.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's a good thing.
He did a whole. It basically makes it like an almost like an 808 drum machine. So you've got, you can see here, kick drum decay envelopes, tuning for all the toms and everything.
It's a good one.
And then individual outputs for the for each voice.
Yeah. It does take it away from it being a pocket drum box.
You change all the noise settings and, for the cymbals and the hi-hats, noise volume, all that kind of stuff. So you could do some really craft the sound. I mean, I know for a lot of people, the 606 might not be the most interesting instrument to use.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Even the way it is. I love it. Yeah.
I loved it too. Yeah,
I just like the sound of it as it comes. It's
it's great. Yeah, you can still get the original sounds out of that if you don't want to use the extra controls on it. But it's I went nuts when it comes to modding out stuff. I've always been.
Have you seen the modifications that Robin Whittle does to the 606? The guy who builds the Devilfish, the guy who builds he does a 303 mod, a 606 mod as well, and that sounds incredible as well, man. There's like even audio inputs, so you can feed it something else instead of the noise of the hi-hat or something. It has audio ins and stuff. It sounds crazy. I mean
Robin's
sound.
Amazing.
Yeah,
he's amazing. Yeah, he did my Devilfish on my 303, and I think we did it in 2015 or whenever I was last touring in Australia. I went to visit Robin and his wife. Such sweet, humble, great people, and they do. He does really great work, and I wanted to do. He also does 808 mods too.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
the TR-808. I wanted to do his modification to my 808, and then I just never got around to doing it. I mean, I still have my 808, but I would love to have him because the quality of his work is just super high. I had that Devilfish mod done back then. Everything works perfectly, even still today. I mean, I don't know how many people that do mods that do stuff at that level of, using quality components and stuff that's going to really, really last a long time and be, take it out, playing shows and really like challenging environments. I think it's some really good. It's just really good engineer. Yeah.
Yeah, he was also working on binaural sound. I visited him as well. Yeah, I visited him as well in must have been, I don't know, 15, 18 years ago when I got my devilfish done.
Yeah.
And he showed me off this thing, which he had a binaural thing attached to a pair of headphones
Yep.
and a mic. And then he took me to the forest, the rainforest close to Melbourne, and then he tried to show it off, and so he walked around me with this microphone, just talking to me, and I could basically hear his voice going around my head, and then he dialed in a delay, so he was in front of his voice, and it sort of became a spiral and everything. It's really, really cool. just a private concert by Robin, of just him talking and being disorienting with the sound and his seeing him move and everything was funny.
He
two guys in the forest with a microphone.
Yes. Very suspicious. Very suspicious.
Healthy, I think,
there was no one around though. There was no one around.
Yeah, he gave me some CD recordings of some like stuff he'd done in the rainforest and stuff, like these binaural recordings back then, and even I was fascinated by that because I'd just been starting to do a lot of field recording myself, and the only like binaural recordings I was doing was using these DPA miniature omnidirectional microphones. They're the 4060s. A lot of sound designers use them, and the way that I was doing it was I was using the old there used to be these like when you buy like an iPod or an iPhone, they would have people that would run with the in-ear buds. They would have these clips that you would put in so that they wouldn't pop out. So instead of putting the the iPhone or in-ear buds, I would use the DPA mics, and I would clip them in right over at the opening of where my ear hole. So I'd get these nearly perfect binaural recordings with those just little clips. So I go
like a DIY Neumann head, basically.
Exactly, and my head was perfect. Specimen for these recordings, and it was I got some. I probably got a couple hundred really, really great binaural, really realistic binaural recordings that way, just sitting really still, like people think I'm listening to headphones because it looks just like little in-ear buds, but they're actually microphones. They're just tiny, tiny little diaphragms. And
they're just secretly judging you from afar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but yeah, I've gotten planes taking off, train stations, just like all kinds of great stuff where if I just wanted to capture just subtly, discreetly things where you don't want to stand in a bunch of microphones and wind cats and blimps and stuff, or you just want to capture something more discreetly. They're a great way to capture a great recording, a binaural recording, if you will. But yeah, that's interesting that you bring that up because like I've been getting into ambisonic recording lately, which is really fun when you're talking about all the panning and moving and stuff around. Like ambisonics has been a really that can be a big head trip.
Wasn't that developed by the same guys who did Turbo Sound and Function One later? Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It's the same.
Yeah.
I love all that stuff. I think for years people have been trying to get that to work for the regular guy. It always seems stuck in this great phase of we can hear it, we can set it up, we can experience it, but you try and for the mass, it's so hard for everyone to experience the same thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's two ways to experience stuff like that. If you're talking about multi-channel audio, played back over speaker sets, which like 5.1 or quadraphonic, or even 16.1 or whatever. There's many different configurations thinkable and exist out there, but way of reproducing music actually requires the listener to be in a sweet spot.
Exactly.
But with you have these systems now like binaural sound, and there's this sort of thing floating around which is called 8D or something, which is basically a format you can experience over headphones, and that's the same for everybody. So there's two different ways. And I think the headphone version or the spatial sound on headphones has a a future, I guess. I mean, the multi-channel audio is good for installations and for one-off performances and stuff like that, and where the amount of people is not too big, so since everybody cannot be at the same place in a room. But these versions which basically trick your brain
you mean
about
like the
something
waves,
being spatial.
You mean like the wave stuff they do? Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. Of course, Richard can show us.
Richard's got it.
Yeah.
I kind of been thinking that, call me the son of the guy that runs Tesla, but what we really need is some kind of electrodes that stimulate the hearing area, that you can wear, and then that would totally get rid of the problem of everybody being able to experience sound in a certain way with real speakers, assuming there's any events again, But I'd kind of be up for that, I think that could be really interesting because we know a lot. We know more and more about how hearing works and how it's wired to the brain, and we don't know everything. But I think there's something in that, for the future.
Oh yeah, I'll be getting implants as soon as we get to supersonic hearing and stuff.
Yeah,
I'm on that.
As long as I can switch them off.
You got one already.
Yeah. No, I was
like, you mean these ones?
They're so out of date, man.
30 years. But Joachim's right. They have headphones now that do.
Yeah.
Are
they the waves?
These are the ones from Waves. Yeah, these are the obvious headphones, which will do like 5.1, 4 point. Yeah. They'll do ambisonic B, depending on whatever. They're really meant for like gaming or like if you're watching a movie that's you don't want to have a like surround system set up they're great for experiencing stuff like that. But they do have systems that can translate those files and triangulate all that audio data into something where you're head tracking your movement.
The head tracker,
with the sound, because in 2016, I worked with Google on their virtual reality platform, Daydream, and I did my first project in ambisonic mixing and sound design, doing user interface sounds and stuff. And so I had to kind of jump into that world for a little while and learn how to do some of that stuff. And it was really fascinating. Like,
I'm sure it was.
It's a lot of ear trickery. Sound distancing, like getting things to sound far away when it's really it's a whole different. It's completely different than working in surround or stereo or even multi-channel, because you're trying to translate the X, Y, and also Z plane axis of sound of stuff, information above your head and below your head, which is not something I think we as humans, we have more problems.
Detecting sounds above,
differentiating those sounds is more difficult for us here. So that was very hard to translate that sort of thing down to like this sort of format. Because when you were saying, for the normal consumer to experience that, we also, working at Google, we had to work within, a headset and a controller that everyone could buy, and then the viewing thing would be from a Pixel phone. So it was all things that they would be able to buy for relatively cheap and get, easily get their hands on, but able to translate that technology through these meetings was sort of a difficult task. At least for me it was, but it was an interesting experience working in that format. I feel like in the future it would be something to explore, because it really does bring this extra. You get so much more sensory. The experience is much more heightened when you have that much more information.
Did that stuff you worked on make it into anything that we can hear, Richard? Because I mean, cool. Because I've been doing stuff in 5.1 and I've left that format for a long time, but recently got triggered with the idea to do maybe something virtual, spatial, like the technology you're talking about. And I was wondering, how that could be used in a really creative way, because the examples you find online, if you look for, that kind of technology, it's basically so incredibly overdone. It's usually, oftentimes it's just stereo track just floating around your spatial image, and that's it. And that's basically, to me, that's completely useless, because that's not how you experience music, and it just gets you nauseous. But if you would be able to split out all your multi tracks, and sort of give them each their own place, or have them move around in a way that makes sense to the music, or makes sense to the experience you're trying to create. I haven't found any really good examples yet.
That is ambisonics, isn't it? That isn't what you're talking about. That's exactly what ambisonics does. You can place.
Yeah, you can.
You can decide.
You can specifically play. You can take a mono instrument, for instance, or a mono signal, and pan it in an ambisonic space. So you have lots of flexibility to do lots of different things. And the technology, when I started in 2016 on the project with Google, even back then the tools weren't that great for us. They were having a lot of we were having a lot of issues. We had some developers in San Francisco that were making like specific APIs for me to use in Reaper for mixing and panning. Google had their own sort of tool set that I was using, and then I was also using some free plugins that were available at that time. But now there's a lot more available now. There's a lot better stuff.
Waves actually makes some too as well, don't they?
Yep, Waves makes the NX bundle. They make their own surround. Ambisonics conversion bundle too. There's a lot more companies now jumping on board. Audio Ease makes their surround pan tools. They have a surround 360 suite, because now 360 videos become more of a standard now with YouTube. Now they're making Ambisonics format B would probably be the most popular audio format for 360 audios, which you'll find is like the standard now, or has become the standard. And that's what I worked in when I worked with Google's. We did format B ambisonics, and it was it's interesting. Yeah, like you said, I think it's definitely an area to explore if you. I mean, I don't know how many of you guys have virtual reality. The first time I experienced it was when we were working with the VR system with the HTC Vive. And going back to Joachim's question, when have I done something with it? Yeah, one of the first products I designed the sounds for them was Google Earth VR. So for those of you who've tried Google Earth, the version that you can visit with your browser, they did a virtual reality
on the Quest. Yeah.
So if you have like an HTC Vive VR system, you can go in virtual reality anywhere on the planet Earth, and visit any destination, and then go there in VR with the controllers and then explore around. What Google had me do is create all of the sort of sound environments, like if you were in a jungle, or if you were in a beach, or in a field, or in an open meadow somewhere. I created the general ambisonic library of sounds, wind, water, and all the natural things that you would experience on planet Earth. And we created this library that would kind of subtly play in all these different areas, depending on where you explored on the planet. And then all the user interaction sounds with the controllers also, I worked on those as well. So it was a bit of a half and half, some synthetic sounds and a lot of organic ambisonic recorded stuff, where I actually had to go out and record some of these sounds out in the field with ambisonic mics, like the Sennheiser MBO mic. We use that. The 450 ST by Soundfield, which is another ambisonic mic, and there's the Rode. I just finished up a library for Rode microphones from Australia. That was I think it was the biggest ambisonic library that's been released in history. Is one that I worked on with 3 other field recordists and sound designers, and that was just released a couple weeks ago. And all the sounds are for free. You can download them for free and listen to them and use them however.
Cool.
So the sounds you recorded are, and once you get into that environment and people are using the controller to move around, I assume the sound, you move through the sound field as well as through the visual field then, right?
Yes. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, the way that it works is with the ambisonic format, it's basically 4 audio channels. Mm-hmm. And those 4 audio channels are always kind of playing. So what's happening is it's always kind of, I don't know how to describe it, depending on where you're moving your head, you're going to get more information if you move your head over here than to the right. So wherever the sound, say if there's like a bird over here in a tree, you're going to hear more of that information, and that information is going to come. It's all based on how you're moving your head. So it's using a lot of phase. And there's all this, algorithmic math that's involved of how the triangulation of where you're at in position in the movements and how much of the sound information is coming in. It's all kind of works together to kind of give you. It's more of an illusion. It's like an illusion of audio to make it believable. But it's really interesting.
It's an interesting area, definitely.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's something I got in by totally by accident. I wasn't looking to do this or anything. It was a friend of mine at Google was. I've been friends with I'd been friends with him before he worked at Google. He got hired as a UX programmer there and was head of this big program, their big VR program there. And then he said, "Hey, do you want to jump on board with this project?" I mean, I was like, I don't have any experience doing this. I could totally fuck this whole thing up, So, and he was like, "Hey, we don't know what we're doing either. If we fuck up, we fuck up together. So let's do this." And I was like, "All right, as long as you know what you're getting into, then I guess we can't lose." So that was a cool way to learn something new. And I think that. Like going back to this 5.1 thing, I also was trying to get into doing 5.1 stuff for a while. I still have I have a surround mix room. Over here we have 7.2 surround Genelec system that I felt like the format, people just weren't getting the format, like I felt people are going in the opposite direction these days. People aren't looking at multi-channel systems. They're buying like these Bluetooth, Sonos, Space, these Bose systems where it's just one. They're not even getting spatial stereo information anymore. They're just buying a Bluetooth speaker that's like a cylinder block, and they're happy with that these days. That's what most consumers are buying is these things that they're not buying multi-channel based systems. You might get a couple people that buy a surround system for a home theater or something, that watch movies, but typical consumers aren't buying. At least
no. And if they do, they set them up mostly in the wrong way,
In the wrong way. Yeah.
We were discussing that last time I was
Yeah. I ran into that so many times, man. You spend all this time working on the, getting your space exactly right, and then the way it's being reproduced, it doesn't make sense at all,
Yeah.
But it's difficult, and that's why I think those headphone technologies are more interesting to have a look into.
It's a more viable option. It's easier for people. I think people are choosing convenience over, having an expensive multi-channel setup that's cumbersome to get everything.
I wonder if that's something called silent disco.
Yeah.
So you have to wear headphones for that. So that's actually a perfect way to get that going. Maybe they're working on it already. I don't know. But you heard of silent disco?
I've never done it, but it'd be interesting.
I've never done it either.
A silent surround sound disco.
Done silent discos.
Silent surround sound disco. That's the next party.
Yeah, VR disco.
Yeah, VR. I know they do VR raves.
Yeah.
With a headset.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I know they do them. I've seen few of those advertised, but I've never been to one. But
no.
I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but there's like a new VR app that's called Tribe, which is basically like a Pioneer DJ mixer and 4 CDJs. And you can actually hook it up to Rekordbox and load in all your playlists into it and play in VR and invite all your friends in there and everything. And apparently everything works exactly the same as it does in real life.
We need a VR version of Rich's studio, man. Let me log in. See you in a minute.
Yeah, it's funny. We have VR parties over here every now and then because a lot of our friends in this area have never done virtual reality, so we'll invite like 5 or 6 friends over, and we'll blow their minds with Tilt Brush or some of these crazy.
Oh yeah.
And stuff, and it's pretty fun, for people that haven't done it. And it's always fun to see the expression on their faces when they do their first VR experience.
Did Google actually release this Daydream thing?
Daydream was released on the. It was an app that was released for their phones, for the Pixel line of phones.
But they don't actually develop a headset, do they?
Yeah, they have a Google VR headset. Yes,
huh.
It's like gray. They're gray, and they have these. There was like a small controller that they had, a set of controllers. It wasn't expensive. It was fairly cheap. And then, but I worked on YouTube VR. I also worked on a lot of internal stuff that didn't get released during that time period. So there was a lot of internal research. We worked on a VR app called Blind VR, which we
I saw that one actually.
Do these headsets map your room and make an index of all your possessions and send them back to Google?
It depends on the app. Actually, yeah. You guys should totally try Google VR. That was scary. Me and my wife were like, "Let's go to our house. Let's see our house in virtual reality." We went there and we were like, "How in the world? When did they get all this data? Like, you could see every part of your house, the roof, any angle of your lot. Like, it was just." We were laughing because we were like sitting up in this tree, like, 50 feet up somewhere. We would never be able to climb that high and see our house from that angle. And we're like looking into our gutters. We're like, we need to clean our gutters out. It's really dirty up there. Like, this technology allows you to see things in a light that you would never normally be able to see,
But let's face it. What's the most important thing is how well does porn work on it?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, that's funny because the porn industry was one of the first industries to move over to VR. They're like fully taking it by storm right now. It's
really,
yeah. Well, it's crazy. When I was
I wouldn't know about things like that.
They gave me kind of a VR crash course on like what's happening in VR, because I basically went from knowing nothing to having to get caught up on everything in a very short amount of time. And they were showing me all kinds of stuff. I was like, wow, I had no idea that this is where things are at now. And now my kids are experiencing VR, and it's like normal to them. They're like, oh, Dad, we can play Half-Life in VR now. Valve Labs just released the coolest game ever in virtual reality, and, stuff that we'd only dream about happening now. It's actual reality, but it's wild.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's one to all of us. It's more in the hardware domain again. I was actually thinking about that the other day because I think last time we did this chat, trackers came up very briefly. Of course, dude.
Hey, Richard's got one.
Yeah.
Like a fucking Swiss Army knife over here, man.
It's funny because I just had to submit my track this morning to Polyend for the final release of their firmware and software that's going to ship with all these units. But it's funny.
Were you ever in Fast Tracker or something like that? I had Fast Tracker when I was on the Atari, like in the early 90s.
I used Octamed. I remember Octamed first. And Renoise, and then I went right to Renoise. I actually still have Renoise on my computer.
Yeah, I still have Renoise here in front of me as well. I still play with it every once in a while.
Yeah, you could do some pretty interesting things with a tracker. I like them because it makes me think differently out of my normal way of sequencing instead of which depends on what instrument I'm using. With a modular, it's always running, so you're not thinking about a linear timeline if you were working in a DAW. But with like the tracker, you're like working with these steps in a vertical orientation, so you're not thinking about things like you're not thinking about time in more of like a linear fashion.
It's like building songs with pattern chaining rather than on a timeline. Yeah, it's very
So
anything that changes the way you think and interact to make some kind of noise, I think is a really healthy thing. The tracker's a good example of that. Complicated for someone like me, and it wouldn't be if I had to get something done. I wouldn't head for a tracker. But really, really exciting to mess around with, and that who knows what could come from playing with stuff, and that's I think that's a great thing. Imagine if you had to do everything the same way every time. I mean.
That's how some people prefer it too, as well.
It's true.
I think
Christian Vogel, met from years and years ago. When he just come out of university, I think. But he used the tracker. He's the first person that showed me a tracker because he wrote everything in a tracker. You know, I was expecting to see he had. We were in a studio, and I was expecting to see he had Cubase version 2 on the Atari, and he just comes in with this computer, and it's tracking. It's like, oh, it's how I make music. You know, it's like.
I think the first time I experienced the tracker myself was on a Game Boy. They used to have the Game Boy cartridge, Alice DJ.
Alice DJ, yep. I saw it.
You just put it in there. I had no fucking clue what it was. But after kind of reading more about it, and I got Renoise installed on my system, I always kind of found it interesting, like even playing with like amen breaks and doing kind of like more drum and bass stuff, how you can actually chop up different rhythms and get the break to start in different places. It's definitely a very inspiring way of looking at things to making music with.
Yeah.
But this polyend one, Richard, it's still pretty much like a classic tracker, but in hardware, right? So it's like a bunch of samples. You can choose from a bank of samples. You can import your own or whatever, and then you just sequence them, right? That's basically the whole idea.
Yeah,
does it sequence external gear? Like, does it sequence? Okay, so you could as MIDI, you can send MIDI out of it.
You've got MIDI out,
Okay.
You've got MIDI in as well, so you can sequence externally if you want. You have a line input too, so you can. It's also a sampler too, so you could sample into it. It's got an FM radio input. You can sample from radio into this, which is really
nice
if you want. And it's as far when I first got it, when they sent it to me, I was a little worried. I was like, oh, this is an interesting sort of device to bring into the 21st century. I also had the I think someone mentioned it in the comments, the Eurorack version of the what's it called, the Nerd Sequencer. Yeah, the Nerd Sequencer, which is also really fun, which is kind of similar setup to this, but I find that the Polyend really did the most elegant solution if you want to play around with a tracker. Like I really liked Renoise for making like really weird rhythms and stuff, because it's funny you mentioned Christian Vogel, because Christian has a couple of really cool patches in the Renoise factory bundle when you get Renoise 2.0, whenever that version came out. But as far as this, there's some really cool stuff they've added to this that you wouldn't get with a typical normal tracker. You've got multiple different like sampling modes, like granular mode, and then there's a wavetable, built-in wavetable synthesizer, so you can use that. You can import your own waves and create your own wavetables that you can sequence within, the tracker pattern mode. And so, and then there's these two MIDI effects that are really interesting that add in all these like probability and chance functions. So you could do like, you could set like a range of samples in a folder and say, okay, I want you to just play samples 2 to 39, and it'll randomly pick a different sample to play in that slot. So you can generate these really like very random, organic, regenerative sort of patches with it. Because when I first got it, I thought it was going to be like a blocky style sequencer that was just repeating these same sort of patterns. But within each step, you can set so many variables that it will never ever do the same thing ever again through one pattern cycle. So it'll keep regenerating these new really, really cool things. And you can do like probability rolling or ratcheting or dividing or offsetting of time per step. And then you can have another effect do something else that's happening at the same time when that specific step is hit. So every time that step could be doing something different every time it hits, that sequence position. So you get some really, really interesting stuff with it. I honestly was really surprised. I didn't know that it would get that deep. And plus you have built-in effects. You have a performance mode where you can like just, automate in delays or reverbs. There's a lot of really, really neat things they added, and they just made it really easy to use. It's not awkward at all to use like the old, like some of the older trackers were to use. They were definitely more awkward and kind of intimidating to use as far as composing music on them. But they've streamlined this and made it very elegant, easy.
Well, it is an elegant design, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's really nice.
But how much of it did you think is novelty in comparison to something that'd be a part of your everyday workflow?
That's a good question. I mean, I'm one of those people who jumps around to a lot of different things all the time. I don't like to work the same way. I can understand why. I don't know. I don't know. It's just the way that I've worked. I get bored easily. I like to switch things up every once in a while, and you know, even from song to song, if I'm working on a record, I don't want to do everything in one environment. Like I don't want it to just be all modular, or I just want it to be one thing. So I kind of switch around using different sequencers or different things to kind of get different outcomes. So it's, you know, one song will be like, well, this came out completely different. Had I not used this piece of equipment, I probably wouldn't have ever written a piece of music like this. But you know, that
do you have a spot in your studio where you can easily plonk something on the table and make a new setup, or because your studio seems, by the looks of it, it seems that it has like a lot of fixed elements in there too, like your desk area and your monitoring area and your modular. I mean, the people who have a lot of gear in their studio, they all come up with different solutions, how to manage everything and how to keep everything accessible. And if you say to me now you're switching stuff around really quickly, is there like a special desk you keep reserved for that, so you can just drag something out and make it part of your setup?
Actually, yeah, that's the desk right in front of me.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay.
This is the rear wall of my studio where I have a big black desk. I've got a couple of other machines here, but it's basically like I have just little tabletop synths and stuff that I can put here if I want to just hook up a couple things or focus on just just learn or study stuff. It's more of a study area for me to kind of figure things out and work on stuff. But yeah, I do. Yeah. And then I have stuff that's always permanently plugged in that when I'm working on projects that I always just have on, and I have stuff I can record them anytime. But I have a lot of floating gear that I'm still learning. You know, if I get something and I want to spend a couple weeks with it, I might take it upstairs on the couch while my wife watches some of her really bad shows late at night. I'll sit there in the headphones and just on the couch and learn.
I knew you took stuff home, man. I was going to say that. I can see you on the sofa with headphones on.
Almost every night. Yeah, I tell people I'm a student in class. I never stop learning. So,
well, it's an interesting thing because look, when I was here before, we touched on it briefly about the idea that because there is so many products that are out there of anything you can think of, you know, there's not just one tracker. There's like variations in software. There's that track you showed. I'm sure there's other things. And that idea that to really master something, there is limitation. Kind of drawing back from that. So imagine you were just stuck with that tracker. And you didn't have the option to move on to something else. I think there's it's interesting, the possibility that because you have to use it, you have to drag everything out of that you can. You have to know every little bit of it. I kind of, it's like a form of limitation, but I think it's a really healthy way of doing it. I mean, by the sound of it, you do it quite quickly. You've got a study area. Sometimes I have another room here and I do the same. If I just want to check out one thing, I take that one thing and put it on the desk, and that's it. It's just that little desk and some speakers. Yeah. To really just focus right in on that piece of equipment to learn it more.
That's what I do all the time. I mean, part of my job as a sound designer, making sounds for a lot of these companies, is doing exactly that. Like they'll give me something and say, Rich, we're going to pay you some money to make us some sounds, figure out how this machine works. So I have to do exactly that.
That's a nice job.
Yeah, it's fun. It can be challenging at times, and depending on what current state the software is with the instrument, it can be sometimes very frustrating. Sometimes you lose work. Sometimes the work you work on gets corrupted if they do updates and stuff. That I've had that happen quite a bit. But I love that idea of like forming this intimate relationship with this piece of equipment that you've just gotten and kind of exploring everything it can do, and not really thinking about all the other stuff. Just being like, okay, what can I just do with this? Yeah. What are all the sound? What if I had to make? And it's an exercise that I do all the time when I get into.
What if you have to make a proper song or record or
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good approach, and it also is true for synths that you have sitting around for years, which could come to life in a completely different way if you complement it with something new. That's
Absolutely.
that's what I do all the time.
Yeah.
It makes the things that you've been sort of discarding for a while completely new and interesting and fresh again. In such combinations. Actually, while you were on, the how you test out gear, this question came in, especially addressed to you, Luke, about the planetary assault system workflow. Is there something you can talk about?
I can kind of do broad strokes with it. The way I work on it is very it's really not formulated at all. So it normally comes down to the groove, but to get to that groove can take any path. So I don't start out with a 909 or anything like that. It can actually be something like I was saying just now. Sometimes I sit in a different room with just one piece of equipment, and if I get something on that I like, even if it's just like a seat, a loop or anything that says to me I like that, then I take that and work with it, and that could turn into a track. But I've never really worked in a way of actually sitting down and saying, right, planetary assault systems track, let's get all the bits up, ready to go. It's never really worked like that. So it's very haphazard way of working, and it has to happen quickly. I have a strict regime on not spending all day on one track. So I like things to happen fast, and if they're not happening, if nothing's really going on, then I quit. So I like to get in and out, and a lot of the time, one of the things I've been doing the last few years is I'll actually record a performance as a kind of like a main theme, and then I'll add to that afterwards. So, like back in the day, everything was very programmed. In one hit, you could play a sequence, you could play a song in their sequencer, and it would trigger all the right sounds to form the track, and then you record that. Or what I like to do now is to process everything again and again and again. So it only has to have a couple of elements for me to record 8 minutes of something I find interesting, and then I'll work off that. And that is almost a complete track in itself. But I just add to that, but the main idea has to be something that I feel I've got in the bag. Yeah. So I'm becoming more and more working like that, where just the one sound can become track, rather than having to have so much in it, which doesn't actually reflect planetary very well, to be honest. But, but that's the truth.
Yeah. I mean, you mean just keep shaping something until it completely stands on its own and has a very specific aesthetic to it. Yeah.
It stands up and said, actually, I like this because I like the way it sounds and the way it feels, rather than having to be a copy of something that happened before. But usually for me, that ends up with a lot of reprocessing through hardware. So I'm continually pummeling,
just
smashing and molding that track in itself, processing the track again and resampling it again and re-recording it until I kind of shape it into something that sounds different. And I enjoy that.
So it's like you run a sound through some processing via your board, and you record it back into the DAW, and then you bring it out again and reprocess it and so on. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, again and again and again.
Okay.
So you like sometimes a planetary track of late has been like 7 or 8 times through a whole chain to reprocess different layers of it again and again and again. Not for the sake of doing it, just because I want to try and somehow mold it. And that's I enjoy that way of working now more than actually trying to write a track in a sequencer with specific sounds. But you can do that now. You know, computers can do that. You can run stuff in and out a lot easier than you could ever do before. You certainly can do it with tape over.
Has anyone started Series 500 racks with there's some really cool processing available now. You know, in the beginning it was basically preamps and EQs and stuff, but now you got things like the Alicia stuff, which is much more geared towards heavy processing, shaping envelopes, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's really cool stuff. Yeah.
I got a rack of their stuff for a while. They sent me the
show us.
Oh, I don't have any.
Okay.
Where is it, Richard?
We got you.
Yeah, I'm gonna. I have three racks of 500 that I use, but I was trying to get some more of the Alicia stuff. They let me borrow a rack of their stuff to try out, and it was really, really nice. Their compressors and EQs were really interesting. But yeah, I got the 500 series bug a little while ago, and I went a little mad. I bought a bunch of like API, SSL stuff, Pultex. I got a bunch of those, and there's some really fun stuff that you can play with, especially if you have other. One piece of gear that I've got that's been a game changer is the Flock Audio patch. It's a digital patch bay that you plug all of.
Oh yeah, that's switches. You can change the order of things and switch around. Yeah, that seems almost essential, to be honest.
Yeah, it's I was just going to get a couple of Switchcraft patch bays, like the old school way of doing it. And then I came across their company. Now I have everything hardwired into the Flock Audio system. So now I can flip my hardware outboard pieces of gear like they're plugins, and then recall them with a click of a button in any configuration I want. I can do like I've got mid-side processing to parallel processing. I can put any EQ, any compressor, or any of the stereo compressors on in a parallel bus, or and like blend in how much I want about to happen, and then store that as a preset that I can recall in just 1 second. It's completely game changing for me as far as like working quickly and trying out different combinations of what different pieces of gear sound like pre or post each other, and then doing shootouts. It's a lot easier to understand why one compressor is better than the other. I can do compare, and you can mult signals too. You can take one signal multiplied across 8 channels and then run it into different processing bus chains, and then print those stems. And then what I do is just listen to all those different stems against each other and be like, this combination worked really well. This one not so good. So you get a really, really good sense of how good or bad some of this equipment works out within different scenarios really quickly. I can't recommend a better. That's probably one of the best gear recommendations I could recommend, is getting a Flock Audio patch, a Canadian company.
They are, but actually, Jochen, there's a company near you in Lelystad.
Okay.
That actually makes it's a different company but makes the same thing.
Okay.
I keep on meaning to check it out when I used to travel in Holland. But yeah, I mean, it's there's a guy in Holland making the same thing. It's not as polished as Flock stuff. Flock's really lovely product, but there's a few different ones actually I've seen around.
Yeah, I know there's a couple. I remember doing the research a while back. It was probably like a year ago when I was looking at patch bays. I spend many nights on Gear Sluts reading all these different forums and comparison shootouts and stuff. And yeah, I'd been researching like different patch bays, because that was the biggest issue for me, is like I wanted something that was like modular, that I could treat my gear like in a modular approach, but not spend tons of time rewiring everything, having to remember how stuff was. And then if I had liked a setting, how could I get back to that setting really quickly? Especially with like when you're tracking and recording or doing your own mastering and stuff, you want to be able to reproduce results that you like, that if you get a good processing chain that you want to go with, you want to be able to use that over and over. So
so you use it on the way in as well as on the way out then? Yeah. Okay.
I also use it in my summing setup too. So I have 2 dangerous music analog summing mixers. So I can reconfigure. Oh, it looks like
Yeah.
someone's
Yeah.
asking about summing, analog summing. Yeah, I got rid of my digital mixing console and went with all analog summing. Not because I didn't like my digital board. I just wanted a smaller footprint. I wanted something that didn't take up my entire room and was going to heat up my studio. And with a big analog desk, I was almost going to get. I was looking at getting like an SSL AWS 900 series console. I was looking pretty hard at those for a while, and then I just was like, you know what? I'm not mixing a band or anything like that. I don't need something with that many channels where I need EQ and compressors on every channel. And I just need something to process stems and get stuff in and out of the computer, really clean recordings, and then I'll figure out what kind of coloration I want to add later on, either coming on the way in or if I want to add it later on. So I just wanted a smaller setup that was easier to use, and so that's what I did for my most recent configuration here. But it's that the Flock is just Flock Audio really nailed it. I mean, it's such an elegant solution, and you can use it for synths too. I when I met with them at the NAMM show, they just came out with the 64 XT version, which is basically 64 inputs and outputs that you could use. So what I might do is instead of what I will do is I'll probably get one of those and route all of my hardware synths into that box, and then each one will be a label. Say like my Jupiter 8, I want to just bring it in like a plugin into my session, then I'll have it there. I can trigger it via MIDI with my Mio 10s here, but then just take that channel stream and run it through any processing chain here that I want at the click of a button, and then just press print and record it right into the track there with any combination of external hardware and software that I want in one
That's
session.
amazing. Yeah, that's such a big difference than getting in there with the wires and
it's
cool.
just so easy to do now. I mean, for me it's been game changing. But yeah, I don't know. That's hopefully, and they're not too expensive. I think they're around maybe just under $2,000. I mean, I know that might seem pretty expensive, but I spent more money on the cables than the actual box. It's all DB25 connector cables and stuff, but even getting a good Switchcraft patch bay is like $800-900. So, and I was going to have to get 2 or 3 of those. So I was still spending the same amount of money to get the old school patch bay in place of this. So it was either one or the other. Neither one was going to be really cheap to get the same results. So I'm glad I went with the other one. But
So what about Ronnie? What about Ronnie's question? Hey Ronnie, in the box summing or out of the box summing? I mean, I've got something to say about that. I mean, most important thing is to get it in really high quality or really, really well recorded, because that's your first stage to get something to sound good, and if once you mastered that, you can start worrying about maybe experiment with analog summing. But to be honest, shit in is shit out, and so if you rather
can't polish your turd.
No, exactly, yeah, that's true. No, it's certainly true for audio. I mean, I mean, the best thing to invest on is getting a really good analog to digital converter before you even start thinking about analog summing. If you record it really high quality, all the dynamics are there, you got it on the right level, that makes a huge difference when you are mixing down, and that's true for in the box or out of the box. But first get all these other steps sorted out before you consider that, I think. Luke, you are summing everything out of the box, right? You are summing everything through your analog mixing desk.
Yeah. So everything runs analog. Then I have to agree with what you're saying. It's much more interesting to have before you start putting what you're doing through end devices, and you start taking them on as being a kind of a fix for what you're trying to do. If you can get it good as good as you possibly can, and then have that as your track. You have the freedom to run that through anything.
Yeah.
You can run it through like a, I've run stuff through anything that's lying around just to see what it sounds like. But if you haven't got the track, if you haven't put the work into the track beforehand, or if you've already run it through something, you're losing a lot. I think you lose a lot of detail. And when you put that through something else, it doesn't always pan out. So I agree with Joachim saying it's kind of don't have your present until you've done the work.
Certainly.
Maybe it's, I don't know whether it's a bit of it's kind of a carrot on a stick, the whole summing thing, I think, to a degree. Or maybe it's just, maybe if you're working in a more classic way of, right, because it's thought of this idea of you're writing a record, and then you're summing it through something that's going to bring everything together. And in my experience, that doesn't work. Not in the way people think it's meant to. If it's not good to begin with, then it's not going to suddenly change the track into being amazing. Yeah. Which is a shame, but that's the way it is.
I think the difference is in the last percent, maybe. If you can once you start talking about these really high-end pieces of studio gear, first of all, you've got to get yourself familiar with whatever you're using, but then it's also the more expensive you get, the higher up in the ladder of the expensive and amazing engineered audio chains or circuits. That every time it's a few percent. It's like it's like this extra little shine or extra little polish or extra space, but it's it's it can get a massive money vortex very, very quickly if you want to start getting into that.
I remember at the studio I used to work with, on the wall, they used to have the number 6 and a letter P, and forever I was wondering what the fuck that meant, and I finally asked the engineer once, and he's like, "Oh, that's the 6 Ps. Proper pre-production prevents piss poor performance." I was like, all right, just get it done right the first time, man.
I never heard of that, man. The 6 Ps. That's good.
There you go. Yeah. Write it on your wall. Yeah, I still haven't jumped into the 500 series stuff myself. I'm still suffering from the lack of material benefits, but hopefully I'll get there soon.
Yeah.
The specific question about the analog to digital, what are you using, Mo?
Analog to digital converter?
Mm-hmm.
I have nothing special. I mean, just honestly, my setup is pretty minimal in terms of processing to go in. I'm just going directly into my Fireface UFX.
Okay, so RME.
RME.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
And you, Luke?
I actually put everything Burl Audio. You know those guys?
Sorry.
Burl.
Okay.
Pro Audio.
They're like rock and roll, man. So that's why I use it for electronic music. But I've actually got really good results just putting a stereo mini jack lead out of a laptop and then just recording it from there. So I'm not sure how important it is. I mean, it's important in some terms, but I wouldn't say it's the all and end all of everything. I like RME as well.
Yeah.
Because stuff just works.
I feel it makes a difference. It's easier to you can get away with less processing if your quality of recording is more high end. because it tends to capture the whole sound, you know, with all its subtleties and the top end and the bottom, and it makes it easier to place a sound in your mix, you know, when it's recorded in a very solid way. And if you're I mean, I completely agree with you. You know, any sound from any you know, so-called quality range can be, you know, something that is very usable in the end result. But it's if you go very lo-fi, everything is more difficult to distinguish, and it's harder to get it sit right. And you know, the definition is just a little bit less pronounced. You know, so what do you think, Richard?
Oh, I'd say I use a couple of I have a couple RMEs. You have the UFX Plus and the 802, and then I have two of the UAD Apollo 16Xs here that I do some of the tracking with back here. But then my analog to digital converters are I'm using the Dangerous Music Convert 80 Plus.
Yeah.
And then to do my DA, my actual playback D to A is the Convert 8s, and then so those are really, really nice. They have a very I don't know how to describe it, very high fidelity, hi-fi sound, real clean. Not as clinical as the RME stuff, but definitely you can hear every macro detail on those Convert 8s as far as so I agree with you when you're talking about having really good you know, analog AD converter. I didn't realize how important that was, or D to A. Either way, going in or going out is really, really important. And I learned that the hard way, kind of using shittier, kind of entry-level interfaces in the beginning, and couldn't figure out why my recordings were coming out so badly, because I was making really bad judgments because I couldn't hear things really well.
Especially if you loop things in and out all the time, you know, if you do multiple passes, and each time it just degrades the sound more. And
I didn't know that. Those were all things that I had to learn the hard way. I was just like, oh shit! Every time I run this through the system, like you said, it's degrading it more and more, and it's making it sound more like shit. And I kind of had to. It was just kind of like, you know, stumbling upon these things. I didn't realize how important, you know, the room acoustics were. Having a good pair of speakers and having a good analog digital converter and DA converter. Those are like the ground one for getting you the most honest. What you want is honesty. You want to know what you're making is honestly what's going to be accurately played back on any type of system that anybody plays your music on, whether it's a small boombox or their car, the car stereo, or a TV sound bar, whatever that end device is that they're playing on. You're going to get, your ultimate goal is to get consistent, you know, the consistent playback, no matter what it is, or you know, a huge function one PA rig outside. If you can get your music to sound almost identical on all those various different playback systems, and you've achieved your goal. And that was basically what my goal was, and what I was trying to, spent my last 4 or 5 years building a system up to really get those results and get really, really accurate audio going in, making sure that what I'm doing and creating is absolutely going to translate to anything you run through outside. And but not just for music. I had to change my setup for a lot of the sound design work I work on, because a lot of the clients I work with in the sound design realm, they don't send any of that stuff to mastering. It's not like, hey, we're going to send this to a mastering engineer and then it's going to go out to the world. That's not even something they think about. So when I work on a lot of these projects for clients, whether it's like gaming projects or like working for sounds for some sort of app or some environment, I kind of have to play the role of being a little bit of a mastering engineer. And I'm not by any means saying I am a mastering engineer or anything like that. I mean, I have friends that I would trust way more to master my stuff than myself, and that's why I still use real mastering engineers to master my music. But when I do work on sound design projects here where we don't have the time or they don't have the budget to do that, I try to make the best, give them the best possible audio that I can with the tools that I have available at that time, and then give them the best quality product that I can in with the tools that I have here. So I've kind of made a little mastering setup for myself for those type of things. And then I've also been kind of just learning on my on my own because I find it fascinating. I find that part of the process, it was always like a little bit of a mystery to me, and I've just wanted to like learn about it on my own. And and it's been fun, kind of like what what if I put the multiband compressor here before this EQ, or what if I use a tube EQ instead of a solid state EQ, or why? What's the differences between these two, and why? What kind of sounds can they give you? What kind of different colors can you get? Or like what is this? How does this saturate harmonically the sound in a way? And why? It's kind of just basically, it's like a classroom for me. I'm just basically, this is my classroom, and I'm just learning about all of these different topics and trying to apply a little bit of what I learned through the experience on each project as I go forward. So
that's good advice, Richard. That's good advice. Because there's a lot of people, asking people like us, questions about very specific things, how we achieve things. But very often we just find out by ourselves, by just trying it out. Yeah.
Trial and error.
It's
Get your
definitely
hands
the most
dirty.
exciting way to do it, I think.
Yeah, don't be afraid to fail and screw up. I tell people that all the time. Like, I screw up all the time. All the time. Still, yeah, fuck up all the time. Big fuck ups too, not just little.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, whenever you post these amazing, like, modular landscape, massive, blinking lights things, it looks like you totally know what you're doing. But I was actually wondering, what are your fuck ups? When are you fucking up?
Some of those pieces came from fuck ups.
Fuck ups, yeah.
Where I was actually going for
Some of the best things to do, man. Yeah.
Yeah, and it turned into something totally different that I wasn't even going for. And I was like, well, this is actually cooler than what I was trying to go for, so I'll just go with this. And that's kind of the beauty with modular, is that when you work with a bigger system like that, where you have a really, really big patch going, you could really shift the whole thing just by doing one wrong thing, or the power going out for a second, then everything being reset. And you're like, oh shit, I just
all the time is lost and everything. Yeah,
I've lost.
Reminds me of that story you told me about at Red Rocks in
my daughter.
Colorado. Dude.
All that was, I don't know if you ever heard that. Well, I played a show at Red Rocks, which is a venue here in Colorado. I think it was about.
It's an incredible venue.
Yeah, it's around 9,000 people. It was I was opening up for this other band that's really big here, so they had me open up for them, and it was I had my kids with me, and I had my modular set in the center there, and I was in the middle of playing, and my kids were dancing on stage behind me. They were live streaming this too on like Live Nation or something. So it was like televised. People were watching it. And my daughter was there, and she was dancing behind me. She's like, "Daddy, can I help you turn a knob?" While I was playing the show, and I was like, "Sure, you can turn the knob here." And of course, she flips the power switch on my modular system and turns the whole thing off, and it just went dead silent in front of thousands of people. And I'm like, of course, the one thing she touches, she shuts off. And they had this all con art stream. My daughter like, I'm sorry, Daddy. I didn't mean to.
Yeah. Did the crowd like it?
They all screamed because they thought it was part of the show, because it stopped. And no one really knew what was going on, but I was like, completely.
One silent. Yeah, exactly. You would just pretend it's intentional. And to be honest, one stop in a set can sometimes work wonders.
It really
as long as it doesn't happen 5 times, but one is usually pretty good.
It's pretty good.
No, but back in the day, I can remember a few occasions where on the turntables, and I know everybody's done it, where you accidentally turn off the wrong turntable. And it's just like, but the thing is, you can carry that if you just you do the poker face, and it's kind of cool as long as you don't do it all the time. So,
it's funny. I often tell people this story. It was the first DJ gig I ever had in front of a group of people. I was playing with vinyl, and I had put on my first record, like my opening record, and it went incredibly. Like the crowd loved it, and I was queuing up my second record, and I started mixing it in. And everybody was going crazy, and I was so nervous that I went to the wrong turntable and picked up the needle off the wrong record. So everything went silent, and I couldn't figure out what happened. I was like, why'd the music shut off? And it took me like 10 seconds, which felt like 20 minutes to like, realize the fact that I picked up the wrong tone arm on the turntable.
Yeah, but you played it cool, right? You kind of like.
I probably looked like a fucking piece of shit. I thought I looked cool, that's for sure.
Yeah.
One thing you could do is just keep a cake behind you, and when something like that happens, just throw it.
Yeah, exactly.
I see some people asking what kind of speakers we use. I lost the comment now because it's going really fast. I think we discussed speakers with Luke recently, but I see on the Colossus you didn't have those standing there last time, did you?
The eggs.
Yeah, what's that?
I got them years back from. They're made by SE Electronics.
Mm-hmm.
They came out with this idea that speakers should be egg-shaped for the acoustics,
right,
which was interesting, and they kind of sent me some.
Do you think they have a point? They have a point? Do they have a point?
They look interesting, But I've never used them to write with, but they're good for sitting on top of that, because when I'm sitting there, they sound okay.
Mm.
But I've never managed to really write on them. They sound really good, but more kind of like quite hi-fi-ish. And that doesn't really work so well with me, because I was saying before, like for years and years and years, my monitors were Yamaha NS10s.
Yeah.
And so many records were written on them. I think I just got accustomed to working with quite harsh monitors that are way up front, which they're not. They're really cool though. They're like egg-shaped speakers.
Yeah,
it's great.
Exotic.
Exotic. Yeah.
Yeah, and it stands work, man. As long as you're close to them, they don't carry the sound too far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're using Genelex, right, Richard?
I'm sorry?
Genelex speakers?
I'm using Genelex, yeah, and also ATCs. Those are the ones that I have behind me here. But I also have Genelex. You can see these here. I'm using some bigger Genelex on the rear table. The new the Genelex, the one, I guess. I don't know if I can do the lighting better. We could see the that's probably as good as the speakers behind me are the they're the ATC SCM 45As, the bigger ones behind me. I've been using those for say about 2 years now, and then I've been using the Genelex ones, the newer Genelex they're like self-calibrating speakers. They calibrate to the room, so they can do like they run a series of different sine sweep tones, and they run there's like software that runs for each speaker. Does
it actually work?
It works great.
Oh yeah. Okay.
It's absolutely. So the other ones, you can see these are the other ones. These are the 8340 ones. And I have been using them. I also have them set up in the other room in surround. So you connect them all to a GLM hub that runs its software. And what it does is that each one of them, you run a mic, you put it in the sweet spot position, and then it runs various sine sweep tones from the mic records currently where you're going to place the speakers are at, and then it finds all the reflections and nulls in the room or where they're based at in the room, and then it will create a calibration profile for each speaker, including your subwoofer too. So I have all of the Genelex subs in here are also digital as well, so they can also be they can also self-calibrate. So where that is really helpful is all the phasing. You get a lot of phase issues with subwoofers, so it'll phase align all the bass frequencies for you and auto-correct everything based on where the subwoofers are placed in. So you're getting completely accurate bass response. And I have 3 of these subs. I have 2 on that wall for each of those speakers back behind there, and then I have 1 here that I'm using with these speakers. But I mean, it's like remarkable technology. It's like alien technology to have your speaker calibrate to your room, and it's the difference between.
I have a similar system. Have you heard of Trinov?
Yes, no, I know about Trinov. Yeah.
Yeah. So Trinov was like a serious development for me because I spent years trying to make a room sound flat. And the amount of time I spent checking waveforms, doing readings, moving speakers around. Doesn't matter what speakers they are, just moving them around, back, forwards, And I got this Trinov system. I don't even have to worry about it. I really don't have to worry about which monitors I really use that much anymore. I don't have to move them. I can just calibrate it to where I sit, and I know. And you can change whether you want them to sound flat, or maybe a little bit more how you like them. And this everything runs through it. So everything that comes out the desk runs through the Trinov before you get to the monitors. So a lot of people, there's purists that say, yeah, but that's not how the speaker sounds, but to be quite honest, it's just made everything come into focus for me, because everything's processed on the readings around the room, and it's I mean,
well, it's true.
This
true
stuff
that,
wasn't around,
I mean,
10 years, 20 years ago. So
it's true that it's not the purest approach maybe, but every room sounds different. So what's the problem? I mean, you've got. I don't have anything measured here, but just moved things around until they sounded good to my ears, and I trust my ears. I know, all the music that I play on these. I know exactly what it's supposed to sound like and how I like to hear it.
Yeah.
It's a very personal thing too,
your monitors,
Yeah, I've had these for about 25 years maybe. I've got the PMC MB2s, and with a big sub to complement them. I only got the sub when I got into in this room, because it's big enough to handle the sub. It's a 21-inch paper cone, and it's a little bit behind the front, and the phase and everything is calibrated, but it's not like an academically tuned sound system. It's but it sounds incredible to my ears. I sometimes I still, after all these years, I love them so much. I love the sound of the PMC so much that I just sometimes just sit here and listen to stuff,
So that's,
and be amazed by whatever I'm hearing. It's and they're nice to work on, because they carry the sound quite far into the room. So even if I'm 4 meters away from them, I still get plenty of information. You don't really necessarily have to be in the sweet spot to be able to hear what you're doing. So yeah. But it's a personal thing, I guess. As long as you can really judge what you are doing, that's the main thing. And it needs to be pleasant. It needs to be pleasant. It needs to be not too fatiguing, not too harsh, not too direct. I like a little bit of tail in the room, like a little bit of space. It's not completely dead. I think we discussed this last week, but it's it's true for. It's very hard that because of this, it's very hard to recommend any monitors to people, because it's every room sounds different, and everybody ears function in a different way.
Certainly.
I've had many before I got these. I've had them all in, like the big Channel X, the Tannoys, what else? Quested, around that time, those were quite famous too, quite big. But as soon as I turned these on, I was like, oh yeah, this is it.
They're the ones.
Instant.
They're the ones.
Love at first sight. I fell in love with them instantly.
Which PMCs are you running?
The MB2s, the large one, the three-way ones.
Yeah.
they're like 50 kilos each. You know, I would, you know, I hate moving them around, but yeah, it's worth it. You know, it's a really nice system.
Awesome.
Mm.
I'm about
Okay,
to
Eric?
switch monitors myself to the Focal 80s.
Oh, Focals, yeah.
Focals are cool, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's actually, I have it in my to-buy cart in today or tomorrow. So
You buy car.
You got that itchy finger, man.
yeah, well, it's like I'm getting a new desk in my studio because the way, you can't really see it now, but the way my system is set up, my speakers are too close together, so I don't have I have a very narrow stereo field, and it's been really shitty mixing. So I got another studio desk, which will allow me to play speakers properly in a better place. And I have these really old JBL LSR room correction monitors that I've been using, and I'm sick of them. So it's time to step out. When we mixed the last album that I did, the Belief Defect record, we mixed them on Focals, and it was such a pleasant experience. So that's
Yeah,
definitely where I'm
monitor. I
going.
like Focals.
Yeah.
By the way, we for the people who are still with us, we started experimenting with something new last week. We set up a Discord server, which is sort of like a real-time, a live forum, and we call it at the moment we call it the Knob Twiddlers Hangout After. So for people who have been here and didn't see their questions answered, or they have more questions, I'll be there after this, after we stop streaming, and maybe the other guests are invited as well.
Sure.
But we'll be there for a while there, you know, just hanging around, and
That's an after party, right?
yeah, it's just an after party chat with everybody who's watching us now, or the people who want to join the server. Yeah.
Awesome.
So what else, guys? Let's see if there's any other questions we can hear. Oh yeah. So the link to the Discord server has just been posted in the comments. So there you go.
Very nice.
Uh,
I just
yeah.
downloaded Discord yesterday for the first time on iOS, but is it on desktop? Is it web-based or is it an application?
Both. Yeah, there's a standalone application, but you can also get in there with in your browser. Yeah. Yeah, I saw this. I saw it pass a few times. It's been around for a while, but I only noticed that with recently when the Super Booth Home Edition was there, I saw it again, and then it really started me thinking. This Zell mixer. Have you seen that? This, the mixer with CV inputs. Yeah.
Played
Have
with
you seen that?
Yeah, I
No.
was in Berlin. You know Mark Anestis, right? From Basic Poland. So it was really, this is a really crazy random story, but I was at Hard Wax with my friend Matt. We were just chilling in there because, I don't know, it's just a great place to go to pick up new music and stuff. It's kind of a ritual for me every time I'm in Berlin. And every time I've been to Hard Wax, I'd never seen Mark ever in the store. And I know he owns the store and runs it with his wife. And I've been a huge Basic Channel fan since I got into listening to electronic music back in the early 90s. And so my friend Matt grabbed me. He's like, look, Mark Anestis is over there. And I was like, no, he's not in the store. I've come in the store 100 times. He's never been here. And I kind of look in the corner. I was like, that actually is Mark Anestis. You're right. And my friend Matt, he's a huge Basic Channel fan too. He's like, we got to go up and say hi to him. We have to say hello and talk to him. And I was like, I'm one of those people who don't like to get in people's business or whatnot, but he just was like, no, we got to do it. It's our only chance. So he walks over there and pulls me over with him. And he's like, we strike up a conversation with him. And I had a show at Funk House the next night with Lawrence von Oswald, his, partner actually, which was weird. The whole reason that we were there and that he was there was because I was playing the show there with Lawrence, and we were both really excited to see Lawrence play, and I was playing a show with him, and it was just kind of crazy that Mark was in the store, and it was kind of like this whole thing. And anyways, we start talking with Mark, and he was super nice. He's like, hey, you should come by my studio tomorrow. It's not far from where you guys are staying in Kreuzberg. I'm actually just 2 minutes away from there. And we were like, two little giddy schoolgirls, like, oh my God, we're going to go hang out at Mark and Nessa's studio. Like, we're going to finally see the mystery of Basic Channel and all the instruments they use, all these like things we've been curious about, we're going to finally see. And we, I text Mark in the morning, and I figured that we were going to hear back from him. Maybe he was just being nice to us or something, when he gave us his number and everything. And then he's like, no, I'm totally having coffee now. I can put coffee on for you guys. Here's my address. Come see me in 10 minutes. And we, ran out of there, like, just with the most excitement we've ever had. And Mark meets us outside. We go in his studio, and he had one of the Zell mixers centered right in the middle of his room. And I didn't know that he was working with Michael Zell at the time. I didn't do a lot of research into the Zell analog mixers, but apparently he's collaborated with Michael in designing this board. And Mark Verbos created the CV bus.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
Mark worked on that as far as all the input and outputs of the control voltages and how it works in conjunction. I think there's like over 260 VCAs in one of the CV channels. I mean, it's some crazy amount. Like the circuit board is like 2 feet deep when you pull it out of the slot of the desk, And so what I learned through all this, we spent, I think that first day, we were in the studio with Mark for almost 7 hours. I mean, I thought surely he was going to kick us out at some point. I was like, dude, we have outstayed our welcome. We were like, dude, you can kick us out at any time. We're just like here hanging out, playing with all your stuff. And he was showing us the mixing board, which to me, it was the first time I'd ever seen it. And he's like, have you ever played around with a Zell desk? I'm collaborating with Michael. He explained to me the story about how he was always looking, for the last 20-something years, he's been looking for a mixing board that he could use like an instrument. Because he looked at the mixing console as an instrument. And that's how they did the Basic Channel records, was they built these things to work and do all the automation for them and do all these things that they didn't want to do by hand. And it really, really gave me insight on how Mark and how he made those early records that I was just so curious about. And it said a whole lot about the design of the desk and how you have all these LFOs that can control all the VCAs and the effects sends and returns. You can take a single hi-hat. Like what I was doing, the first thing I did was take like a hi-hat from his Electron Digitac. We ran it into the desk. And then I just started moving knobs on the first CV channel, and before you know it, the hi-hat was swirling around, like swimming in reverb, coming back, and then it would swim into a delay and come back, and all from just a couple of knob positions and setting some LFO modulation points. You didn't have to patch anything. All of it was just built into the desk. And I sat there looking at Matt, and I was like, whoa, this is absolutely...
Okay, so even with external CV input, you can already...
there's built-in internal modulation.
Yeah,
if you get the CV channel, so the CV channel strip is a bit wider than the typical. You can get a regular Zell channel strip that has like the EQ, and actually I bought the 500 series, the EQ one. You probably won't see, but it's back there. I was so impressed with his EQ that I bought the stereo mastering EQ in 500 series. But that same EQ is in the strip of the AM1 console. So if you get like a regular AM1 Zell console, you'll get the EQ, plus they have the, every other insert. And I think it's like 6 aux sender returns per channel. I mean, they're really, really long strips, but the CV channel, the CV bus channel is really what I wanted. And he had 8 of them, and he wanted to get 8 more to do 16. And that way, he could spread out, separate the kick drum, the snare. Every instrument could be moving and animating. It's so awesome because you can really dial in and get like this perfect sweet spot and then just let it go. And it'll just weave in and out and do these things where I instantly got it. I was like, Mark, I understand why you collaborated with Michael and had one of these specific specifications into this board. It makes total sense now to me. It's like, I mean, it really made the mixer come to life and really become a musical instrument. I mean, you could just do such amazing things with it. I was blown away, and he even invited us to come back a second day. We came there and we played for another 5 or 6 hours on his AM1 desk, and literally not only we're getting to hang out with one of our our techno heroes, but to get schooled on this new mixing console was just an ear-opening experience. I'd never had.
It looked really interesting to me, especially because it brings the mixing or the creation. It integrates the mixing stage into the creation stage, basically. So you're not like making your stuff and then put it through the desk. It's the same thing. It's the same process. And that's what really interesting to me. I think that's a really
it's fat.
Yeah, totally not new, but it's like a whole other way of working. It's like because all these normally it would require like an octopus, to handle these many knobs. And
you'd have to have so much patching and automation to do what it does in a few seconds. And the quality, the sound quality of that desk, like Michael is like the components that he uses are just. From what Mark was telling me, that there's no expenses. He uses the absolute best components. He will not compromise on anything. And originally he was collaborating with Wowo Schwayman before Mark, but Wowo wanted to cut some corners, which I thought was kind of interesting because I considered Wowo using very high quality components. I have a lot of his. I have like the S1 and I don't know, probably like 40 or something. Schwayman modules here that I feel that are all made of very high quality components that are they sound very nice, and to hear that Schwayman wasn't on the quality enough for on Michael's level, that wasn't enough for him. I was like, wow, he really is going for the highest level of components and sound that you can get possible with this mixing desk, and you could hear it. I mean, every little subtle thing that you changed on that desk, it was unbelievable. Like, I would love to have an AM1 desk here. I just don't have the room. Because ideally, if I wanted one, I would want what Mark has. I'd want a 16 CV channels, like, because the CV channel could be stereo, or you could run one, or you could do 2 mono, but they could run stereo if you want. So you could do these cool like stereo pattern modulating patterns per channel and stuff like that. Ideally, I would love to have 16 of those, but it would be cut off expensive and it would take.
I mean, when you think about it, the concept of a mixing desk, the whole idea was to put things in front of you that you will need a lot of every time. EQ, gain, faders, and so when you think about it, it just makes total sense to expand on that and add some more things that you're going to want, and it's. I've done quite. I did think about getting one of those desks because they look amazing. I mean, I know they're amazing. They are amazing. It's taken many years for that kind of idea to come through, isn't it? That sort of, well, what is a desk? It's having things in front of you, and I mean, hats off to those guys. That is.
I might get one too. I mean, I still haven't completely.
I'm surprised you haven't got one, man.
I dream. I go to their site every few nights, and I'm like, maybe I could get room for
I think you should get one, man.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, you can buy them per channel, right? You could just buy a chassis, and then you buy 2 stereo channels, for example, and then I mean that gives you that would give you such a range of new possibilities alone. Just have 2 or 4 channels.
I think you buy a frame.
Per 8 units or something.
Right.
They make a built-in 8-channel system though. Is that the smallest one that they make?
I can't remember. I think you can get an 8 frame and then just add 2 channels.
And then you could either buy regular channel strips or you could buy the C channels. You could do any mixture of whatever you want, whatever configurations you want. So, but you could start with like a chassis that has 8 slots, and then there's like a master channel slot that you sum channels through that you buy that comes in that frame. And then you can expand that too. You can go 32 channels, 48, 16, whatever you want. It just depends on how many you want to go. It's completely modular, however much you want to go. Or I believe I want to say that Mark had 8 of the CV bus channels, and I think he had 8 or 9 of the regular single strip AM1 channels strips in his desk. But yeah, those were nice too. Everything was just beautiful build quality. Like the craftsmanship was just knobs. Everything just felt like a solid as a, just, yeah. In his room, everything was so perfect mixing environment. All the furniture was machined, and like, it was just, it was incredible to see his setup. And he had the P5, 3 of the P5, the Prophet 5 and the rack mounts. I don't know if you guys ever messed around with those. And he told me he had flown all the way to Detroit to get one of the Prophet 5 racks from Mike Banks. Told me this really crazy story about how he picked up one from Mike Banks. It was really awesome to hear the history of a lot of just some of my favorite dub techno tracks. The history behind a lot of this stuff that I was always curious about, because they're a very mysterious group. They never let out any information about how they made their records or what gear they used, or and I was just fascinated to absorb.
A Prophet 5 and a rack mount, huh?
It's called the P5. It was.
Yeah, I can see it now.
Yeah. Mark had 3 of them. That was basically their sound. I didn't know that. When he said, we talked to Moritz von Oswald, to Moritz the next night when I played with the Moritz was like, yeah, Prophet 5 all the way. That was our main instrument. And he had a Prophet 6 on stage that night. We asked him, what do you think about the Prophet 6? He goes, no, let's not even go there. This isn't not even this. But yeah, I didn't know that. I had figured they had used the Waldorf Wave or was using custom stuff, and they did. They were using I saw a lot of custom stuff that Mark had built at his studio too for generating. They had this chord generation thing that was really interesting that they had built, or Mark had built with some other engineer that generated MIDI chords for them. That was really fascinating. It looked totally like something that was all jacked up and made for it was just so interesting to see how they work. And yeah, they should do a documentary about them. I don't know. I feel like that's like documentary level of total music. They were like total musical geniuses in my mind, and still are to this day. I mean,
and how well the music still stands today. How well it holds up. After all this time. I mean, some of the stuff you used to hearing. It sounds amazing in your head, and then you go back to these older tracks and you think, it doesn't really hold up, these days. But all that basic channel stuff, it still sounds absolutely amazing to this day.
Yeah, it's timeless. I say it's
and really original. It still sounds like really special.
and it's also it was I guess it was I mean that the whole mastering side of things was also a big part of what they did, but thank God that they that it was all done before the loudness war. I mean there's so much dynamic and so much space in these records. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean it's like you said. I mean, I could put on like a Mauricio record, any of the M7 stuff, like put it on. They're 20 years old, 25 years old. You put it on, you're instantly hypnotized. So you're like,
yeah.
Even on small speakers or you're hearing those records on a big PA, where I'm just like, wow, like how many people? I mean, how many artists do I know where they could use just a couple of elements in a track? They don't have to use that much stuff, right? It's not a really complex track. Well, maybe there is complexity in what they're doing, but it's just something that they're doing. They do it so tastefully that you don't even realize that 7 minutes has gone by. You've gotten so lost in this track, right? Mm-hmm. And then you're just like, you're looking at your watch like, it's already been 10 minutes. It feels like, how did they do this? Like I was always just amazed at how they were able to do that. Like hypnotically just suck you into the space, and then they have you the whole time. And
but I mean, it's very repetitive, but there's no bar is the same as the other one. It's all floating and changing and
drifting apart.
It's
just, it really is just, I don't know. For me, it's something I've never been able to achieve. I don't think I'll ever be able to do it, but I've always been fascinated by their work. And it was fascinating to go visit Mark and see a little bit of how he, a bit of history, and also how he's currently working now with the AM1 mixer. But that mixer made a lot more sense, and kind of I was curious why that mixer was even created or where the idea had come from, and then seeing how Mark became a partner with Michael on that, it made a lot of sense. And it also was kind of like gave me a inner working of like how they work and how they want a mixing board to work as an instrument, and so it was fascinating. I had a track that almost sounded like a basic channel track that I was making on Mark's board in his studio, and I was like, oh, I get it now. I understand. This is awesome. Like, I could see this going so far. And I know they're trying to get a lot more people educated about this desk, and I think they shipped a couple to the US. I think like Vintage King has one in LA. They've got one in Nashville at the Vintage King here they're going to send. So they're trying to get people in America to hear and try out this board, so they can experience what we experienced at Mark's place. I think for a lot of people it'd be a real ear-opening thing to play around with for a lot of folks that have worked with mixing consoles in a certain way. I think it really kind of it's like a playground. It becomes an instant playground within just a couple of seconds, taking like the most simple element, it was just a hi-hat. I made that hi-hat just completely fly around and like do all kinds of crazy stuff. It was just fascinating. Yeah, really
awesome.
Good to hear.
Okay, guys. So we're running up to 2 hours. Yeah. Time flies.
That's a step, man.
Time flies when you're having fun, right? Well, yeah. I mean, this was certainly very interesting. So thank you all for hanging out. It was great.
That's right.
And
pleasure.
Yeah, great. And so for the people again who are watching this and want to continue on the Discord server, the link is already there. It'll be posted again. And I'll be hanging out there. Maybe some of you will be there or
I'll
not.
join
I don't
in
know.
for a bit.
Okay, cool. So thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for hanging out, and see you next time.
Cheers.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.